I'm in Shenandoah National Park, and this is the parking lot at Gravel Springs Gap. This is mile marker 17. Yep, there it is. My little red car. There's a service road that heads down the east side of the mountain. It also goes to the Gravel Springs hut. If I have time when I get back from hiking to the north, we'll go that way and check out the hut. Right there is that signpost. There is the Appalachian Trail. It goes across the parking lot and goes over there to that concrete signpost over there. So we're going to head over that way and then hang a right and hike north up to the summit of Marshall Mountain up this way. And when we get to the summit, I'm going to look around for some old historic benchmarks. The elevation here is 2675. Three-tenths of a mile into my hike. I'm hiking along the Appalachian Trail heading northbound. Just climbing through 2,800 feet. And about another half a mile. We're going to be at the first of two peaks. The first one is South Marshall. So I'll do a little video blurb when we get up there, and then going to descend, cross over Skyline Drive again, and then climb to North Marshall Summit. And North Marshall Summit's where the benchmarks are. We'll look for them when we get there. Eight-tenths of a mile into my hike. I'm still on the Appalachian Trail. Climbing through 3,000 feet now. So let me look at my GPS for a second. About another 3/10 of a mile to the South Marshall Summit. Let me get a spider web out of my way. Pretty good use for trekking poles. So from the parking lot at Gravel Springs Gap, it's a steady climb getting up here. Nine-tenths of a mile into my hike, I'm up to 3,040 feet. There's where I came from along the Appalachian Trail. That's the way I'm headed, continuing to climb. And right here, people piled up. I guess there's a natural spring oozing out of the ground here, and look, people piled up the rocks and created a little pool of water. So you can get some water out of that if you really need some. Of course, I would filter it before I drank it. Just around the bend from that little pool of water is this Rockslide, and some wildflowers, and a view to the west. Nine-tenths of a mile into my hike. The elevation here is 3,060 feet, and stepped out of the woods here onto a ledge. The view to the west well, north and west. That way's to the north. It must have rained here last night because the trail's all wet. And let's see if I can get it to, and all these little rock depressions are full of water. See that? Right next to that viewpoint is this, I'm going to call it a potential camping spot. It's pretty close to the Appalachian Trail though, but in a pinch you can make this work, and it looks like other people have already. And then out that way is the overlook. .1 miles into my hike. The elevation here is 3130, still climbing. And here's like a second viewpoint, rock outcropping, looking to the west. It's fairly close to the first one I showed you. Very similar view. .3 miles into my hike. The elevation here is 3215, and right over there, that's the summit, South Marshall. I'm still on the AT. Here's where I came from. And here's the way I'm going to the north. I'm going to start descending now until I cross Skyline Drive, and then we're going to hike the North Marshall Mountain. .8 miles into my hike, getting ready to cross Skyline Drive on the Appalachian Trail. The elevation here is 3,075 feet. There's one of the signposts. White blaze on the tree denotes it's the Appalachian Trail. There's where I came from, out of the woods along the AT. Skyline Drive, surrounded by gnats. They're really bad. And I'm going to continue on to the north this way. I'm crossing at about a 45-degree angle and keep on climbing. This time we're going to be climbing North Marshall Mountain. .9 miles into my hike. The elevation here is 3,080 feet. And this is another parking area. This is the Mount Marshall Trailhead. I'm walking past it, and there's an information kiosk there. And continuing to head north on the AT this way. 2 miles into my hike, I'm up to 3270, and here's another viewpoint. Down there, Skyline Drive, you can see a piece of that. Looking to the west. And up that way I can see more little slivers of Skyline Drive. .4 miles into my hike, I'm up to 3,310 feet. Here's another overlook. I think I'll mark this one Marshall View number 4. Almost to the top now. .6 miles into my hike, I'm at the summit of North Marshall Mountain. The elevation here at the summit is 3368, and that's where I came from, the Appalachian Trail. Maybe you can see the white blaze, and this great big rock outcropping looks like the high point to me. So I'm looking around, and there's one of the marks right there. And I'm looking over there, and there's another mark. So let me get some close-ups and we'll see what we've got. Okay, this first one is marked TT Station number 24B 1928. Either 1923 or 1928. Let's go over here and see what this second one says. Okay, here's the main mark. It says Coast and Geodetic Survey Triangulation Station, and then it's stamped Marshall 1894, and then it was remarked in 1933. And from reading the printout, in 1894 that was a drill hole, and then in 1933 they came back and filled in the drill hole with this bronze disc. There's some more of them up here, but the sky is not looking good right now, so I may have to turn around and start heading back, or I'm going to get caught. Okay, okay, there's reference mark number 1. It's marked Marshall, number 1, 1894, 1933, and the arrow is pointing that way, right over there to the station. So there's the station, and here's reference mark number 1 right here. Okay, well, I had to beat my way through the main stations over there, and I had to beat my way over here. And here on the very tippy top of this rock cliff, this is looking over the edge. Right here is reference mark number 4. So I'll get some coordinates for this one too. Mount Marshall, reference mark number 4. And the arrow points back to the station. Okay, I've looked around about as much as I can up here in the summer. Maybe I could maybe come back in the winter and perhaps find some other marks. But when you're coming up from the south, you come around this bend, and this great big huge pile of rocks here. This is the summit. And the main mark from like 1869 and 2 reference marks are up there. And then over down the valley and over on the next little ridge is reference mark number 4. Reference mark 2 is supposed to be right up here with the rest of them in a cluster, but I didn't see it, so don't know what happened to that. Anyway, that storm cloud kind of blew over. The sky's looking a little better now, got some sun, but it's time for me to start heading back, so I'm going to turn around and head back to Gravel Springs Gap. Five miles into my hike, I'm almost back to my car. The elevation here is 2670, and right over there is my car, and there's the parking lot, Skyline Drive. When you come across here, this is the Appalachian Trail. But if you take a close look, you'll see there's another trail that heads off, a dim trail that heads off there to the left. And let's see, maybe looking through here, you can see that there's a trail down that way. That's the old Browntown road, goes down the west side of the mountain all the way to the bottom. If you come here in the winter time, you can hike that. I've hiked it, and I have a video on it from probably 10 years ago. So this is the Appalachian Trail, but when you first cross over Skyline Drive, if you look to the left here, you'll see the old Browntown Road, and that's worth hiking also. This is a map of today's hike. The quadrangle name is Chester Gap 1994, and I hiked a stretch of the Appalachian Trail that I hadn't hiked before. This is Gravel Springs Gap along the Skyline Drive. This is mile marker 17. You park over here on the east side, there's a parking lot. Cross over Skyline Drive, and you'll be on the Appalachian Trail. Here's the Appalachian Trail coming up from the south. It shoots across Skyline Drive right here, and then it continues on to the north like this. Now, one thing I pointed out, when you cross over here, you'll see a concrete signpost that says Browntown Trail. That's this trail right here that goes down the west side of the mountain. Okay, down to Browntown. It's really overgrown up through here, so in the summertime in the summertime when you come across here, it'll be hard to even find this trail, but it's there, and it's on the maps. Anyway, I stayed on the Appalachian Trail, start climbing Marshall Mountain. Now Marshall has two summits. There's South Marshall here, and then up here's North Marshall Summit. So climbing the mountain, to get up here close to the first summit, that's a viewpoint there. There's another viewpoint. Then I reach the summit of South Marshall. There's no view there, it's just trees. Then you descend down to Skyline Drive, cross Skyline Drive, and then you start climbing North Marshall on the Appalachian Trail. Now I think there's more viewpoints than what I actually showed here, but there's one about here, there's another one about here. Up to the summit here, and then when I got to the summit, I searched for a bunch of old benchmarks. Some of them are fairly historic. I'll talk more about that in a second. There really isn't much of a view up here anymore because all the trees have grown up and a lot of underbrush covering things up, so the marks were hard to find. Turned around and came all the way back down to my car here. Now I was thinking I was gonna come down here to the Gravel Springs hut, but I decided not to. By the time I got back to my car, it was starting to get late, and it was threatening to rain, so I skipped this part here. Okay, so it was basically from the parking lot up to North Marshall Summit and back. Now, a little bit about these benchmarks I was looking for. I printed this page from a document created by the Coast and the Geodetic Survey, and it's dated 1901, the Eastern Oblique Arc. That's the title of it. When our nation was young, there was a need for accurate maps, especially accurate maps of the Atlantic coast, because there was a lot of shipwrecks, and part of the reason for the shipwrecks was lack of accurate maps. So President Thomas Jefferson in 1807, he signed a law, a public law, that authorized a survey of the eastern coast of the United States. That was in 1807. It didn't get started, though, until later because the War of 1812 happened. They eventually started the survey. It ran from Maine all the way down the east coast at an oblique angle to Louisiana. And the survey was from 1833 to 1898. Now, this is a picture showing some of the area here in Virginia. This part up here is in Maryland. But there's Bull Run Summit. Here's Mount Marshall. That's the one I just visited on this hike. South of there, still in Shenandoah, is Fork Mountain. Charlottesville's down here, and then over here on the Blue Ridge Parkway is Humpback. And then further south, all the way down to Louisiana. So this area in through here was called the Kent Island Base. And basically what they did was they put these survey markers up on these summits, and then they took precise measurements of the latitude and the longitude and the elevations. And if you have a series of points like this and you know these locations, then and you measure some of these distances, Then you can create triangles. And then based on those triangles, you can know a lot of these other distances. So it's basically trigonometry. Now, when I got up there, there's a database where you can look a lot of these up. And here's Mount Marshall. And there's the elevation, 3,373 feet. All these numbers here give you the latitude and the longitude. And then down here in this section, it shows some of the other reference objects that you can see from Mount Marshall. That's a reference mark. Here's another benchmark up there on the same summit. Reference mark and reference mark. So I've got pictures of that. This one was monumented in 1869. So it's one of the original survey markers from the original East Coast survey. This turned out to be 5.1 miles and a total ascent of 965 feet. And that's the hike for today.